Hi Wildings, welcome back to the Wilding Tarot YouTube channel for a very unique and interesting video today. So you're probably going to have to bear with me as I try to explain how it's going to work. I've set it up differently to probably most of the other tarot kind of videos on YouTube. So you'll have to kind of pay special attention to my instruction portion of this video, and or also double check the instructions that I'll leave in the description box just to cover all bases and make sure that I'm not being confusing. If I am being confusing though, it's so fine to pick a pile as you normally would with this reading. Just go with your intuition, see where you end up. Like, that is so fine. But it'll make a little bit more sense why it's kind of like a weird setup when I get into the explainer part of this video. So without further ado, let's get into the proper explainer. Let's talk about what we're going to do today for our reading, and let's get our channeled messages. Okay Wildings, let's get into today's video. As you can probably tell, it's a little bit of a different setup, so I'm going to have to explain how to get the best reading for you based on the topic of the day, which is what's to come for you during this upcoming Mercury retrograde, especially in life and in love. So the Mercury retrograde is going to be occurring at 10 degrees Aquarius about on the 14th of January at 10:40-ish p.m. here in Australia, which is my local time. Obviously, it goes retrograde at different times depending on where you are. And Mercury is the ruler of Gemini and Virgo. It also rules things like thinking, communication, intellect, lifestyle, routine, kind of how things work fundamentally as well. And lots of like very third house, sixth house energies, because they're the houses that Gemini and Virgo rule. So if you are a Virgo or a Gemini, you're very likely to feel Mercury retrogrades a little bit more than others, or if you have a lot of placements in those areas. As well, if your Virgo or Gemini fall on your midheaven, or any of those big kind of areas, so like home, relationships, midheaven or career, and self and identity, if any of those are affected for you based on your natal birth chart, you probably feel it a little bit more. But Mercury tends to be felt by everyone. It's a very fast moving planet. I find it has a lot of energy. And because it rules kind of thinking, communication, we are such a like cognitive and communicative kind of society, it does affect us a lot, as well as it kind of affecting how things work, and tech, especially anything with moving parts, and like tech kind of stuff gets affected. The last time Mercury was in retrograde, I think Instagram went down, which is like not surprising at all. So yeah, Mercury usually in our relationships affects thinking, communication. Sometimes it creates backslides, people kind of reaching out to communicate with people from the past, things like that. And like things tend to break down in Mercury retrograde. But as you can tell by this Mercury retrograde card that I've laid out from my zodiac deck, it's very much about reinvention. Like, all retrogrades aren't really that bad. They're just really a time where things kind of break down to be built up better. So it's kind of like an undoing to redo kind of energy, and to redo in a better way. So that's the energy that's going to be active. And this is happening in Aquarius, which is a very kind of connected energy. Aquarius really cares about kind of humanitarian issues. It's very connected to all people. It's a very caring energy, even though they can seem like really cut off. It's caring from like the perspective of for the greatest good, which like if you know an Aquarius, like it's very likely that they're kind of like for the greatest good, like caring about everyone is to honor the fuck out of themselves, honor the fuck out of their boundaries. Like they just like know that by abandoning themselves, they serve no one, and staying true to themselves, they serve everyone so much more. So that's kind of the energy of this retrograde, and that's likely going to be the theme of this retrograde. So you'll be affected by this retrograde differently based on where your Aquarius sign is in your natal chart. So if you're a Leo rising, a Libra rising, an Aries rising, a Sag rising, or a Cancer rising, or if you're a Scorpio rising who's married, it's very likely that this retrograde will affect your love life, your romance, your sexual relationships, or just relationships in general, because your Aquarius placement is in houses that are very relational. So if that's you, you can choose this pile here. If you're a Capricorn rising, a Virgo rising, or a Taurus rising, your Mercury retrograde is more likely to affect your career, because your Aquarius sign rules houses that have a lot more to do with finances, career, and service for others. If you are a Aquarius rising, Gemini rising, Scorpio rising who's unmarried, or a Pisces rising, your Mercury retrograde is much more likely to affect yourself, your personal identity, as well as personal development in general. And so you'll do best getting a reading for this third pile. So based on all of that information, these are my recommendations for which pile you go to based on your rising sign to get the most accurate reading for today's reading, just knowing how this retrograde is likely to affect you personally. Obviously, if you're drawn to another pile for like a love or career or personal development reading as well, like go ahead and watch it. Also, if your rising sign reading isn't really resonating, or you don't know your birth time, so you don't know what rising sign you are, your sun sign will also suffice. And I'll leave a little description in the description box of each rising / sun sign, what house it'll be affecting, and what reading to go to. If you've gotten a little bit lost or confused in my explanation, like it'll be rewritten there, so you can reference that if that got a little bit confusing. But I think that's basically everything that you need to know to get the most out of this reading. I recommend just kind of like taking what resonates, leaving what doesn't, remembering that it is a general reading, so there will be some messages that'll really resonate, there'll be some messages that'll definitely be for other people, and there'll be some messages that are kind of in between that you might need to meditate on or like adjust slightly intuitively based on your particular situation, because some things might play out a little bit different for different people just based on their circumstances. So yeah, again, this is another reading where I'm being a little bit creative, a little bit inventive, a little bit kind of doing it my way, and it's definitely probably nothing that you've come across on any kind of tarot YouTubes or TikToks or anything like that, because obviously it just like came from my brain today. This is what Spirit asked me to channel, so this is what I'm doing. So if it's a little bit clunky and unfamiliar and weird, like, we'll get there. Just leave any feedbacks that you have in the comments. If you got confused, let me know so I know how to adjust this and make it a little bit easier to digest in the future, because I really appreciate any feedback of like, especially when I'm doing something a bit different, so that I know how to make it better in the future. But we're going to start reading, so choose either love, career, or self or personal development to get a reading today, remembering that if you've forgotten what rising sign is supposed to be with which pile, it'll be in the description box to remind you, and wherever you end up, either in pile 1, 2, or 3, I will see you there in a moment. Hey there, pile 1. If you chose this beautiful pink agate crystal, I'm assuming you're either a Leo, Libra, Aries, Sag, or Cancer rising, or a Scorpio rising if you're married. and or any of those sun signs to get your reading regarding how this Mercury retrograde is going to be affecting your love life, especially because all you guys are having your retrograde happening in a house that's commonly associated with relationships, and probably more romantic relationships than the other houses, or sexual relationships at least. So if you want a few more details about how it'll be affecting you in particular, check the description box below, because I'll just leave like a couple of buzzwords of like where in particular it'll be affecting you, so that you'll know how to kind of interpret any ambiguity in the reading, because obviously there'll be kind of space for everyone to interpret some things in a different way based on where your retrograde is happening. So yeah, that's there for you as a resource, but we'll get into today's reading. Okay, Spirit, what's happening in love for these rising signs, please? Spirit, what's happening in love, please, for these rising signs? Spirit, what's happening in love, please, for these rising signs? Please clarify this. Can you please clarify this Queen of Pentacles energy, please? Can you please clarify the Lovers card for me, please? And can you please clarify this Fool card for me, please? And the High Priestess as well, please. So for you guys, there's going to be things from your unconscious that are going to come to light during this retrograde period that are going to create a renewal in terms of your relationships, particularly with romantic partners, but this might affect other relationships as well, where you're going to be able to connect with people much more authentically on much deeper levels, potentially more spiritually as well, especially if you're in a partnered or romantic connection currently. If not, your potential to connect with people will be deeper after this retrograde. Things are definitely going to come to light, and you'll essentially be in a much more intuitive space when it comes to relationships. These 4 cards at the end here all kind of reference newness, new cycles, the unconscious, and things coming to light from the unconscious, things that have been holding you back in relationship in some way, that are now ready to be cleared. This 4 of Swords is a heavy renewal energy as well. So all of this is very renewal energy in your relationships, and kind of letting go of things that are holding you back in any way. During the retrograde, this might get a little bit bumpy for some people based on this Tower card coming out upside down. So this lesson might not come as kind of like an aha realization. It might come as more of a going through some kind of clunkiness, but then coming out the other side and having that kind of retrospective hindsight realization of like, oh, like that didn't go to plan because X, Y, and Z, and this is the way that I want to kind of operate moving forward and show up in relationship moving forward. And I would say for the majority of you, you'll intuitively know what that message is when you get there in terms of how it applies to you particularly. I would say for the majority of people here, the kind of tone of the lesson will definitely have a lot to do with kind of knowing what you deserve in connection, as well as being able to choose a partner very much who's aligned with kind of your own vision for your life, as well as who's a kind of more secure and stable choice, potentially, rather than people who have maybe been a little bit unreliable, or potentially if you're already coupled, it'll affect your relationship in more of the way that you and your partner will shift into more security and stability with each other. There'll be kind of like this shedding of any insecurity and definitely any resistance to imagine more for yourself in this connection. Yeah, there'll just kind of be this like spark or renewal of kind of excitement and imagination and real vision for your connection moving forward. It's likely, based on this Lovers, Queen of Pentacles, and King of Pentacles energy, this is all heavy, like kind of soulmate-y energy. It's very divine pair kind of energy. It's a very matching each other energy. So if you are in a connection, I would expect the two of you to match each other's energy a lot better. If you're not, I'm expecting you to move into connection in the future where the energy is much more matched with you and that prospective person, and you're much more on each other's level. And you're also both able, kind of regardless of what situation you're in, you'll both be able to... Okay, so my video just cut out then. Luckily I heard it stop because I've got the sound on. If I had lost that whole reading, that would have sucked. But basically what I was saying before the camera cut out is these energies here, these King and Queen of Pentacles, these are divine counterpart energies. These are probably the most secure, stable, mature of all the minor arcana too. They're very well set up in life. The Queen of Pentacles is kind of the eternal mother, and the King of Pentacles is the eternal father. I would say these energies are probably most related to Emperor and Empress energy, especially Queen of Pentacles and Empress energy. The King of Pentacles is Emperor-ish. I would say the Emperor is a bit more risk-taking and fiery, but the King of Pentacles is kind of a bit more of a secure, stable kind of father figure. So yeah, they do deviate a little bit, but yeah, this couple, they kind of have it together. This would be a really good setup for a family, if that's something that you'd like in the future. This is a really good energy for that. And it's also a really good energy for using the partnership as a vehicle for like personal growth and spiritual evolution, especially in regard to really witnessing when you're getting triggered in relationship and understanding where it comes from in regards to your past conditioning, and being able to pour like lots of love and acceptance into it to the point where it starts to heal. Because the age-old saying goes, we hurt in relationship, we heal in relationship, and this lover's energy is heavy, like we heal in relationship energy. And yeah, it will likely, if you're in connection, will likely evolve into a more spiritual connection. And if you're not in connection, it's likely that you'll be drawn to more spiritual connections in the future. This Hanged One energy, this is heavy Neptunian energy. Often it's associated with uncertainty, but kind of more deeply, uncertainty is kind of the natural state of life. Like chaos and uncertainty is the natural state of life. And the only certainty we really need at the end of the day is trust in ourselves, like trust in ourselves to deal with the uncertainty and chaos that life brings us. And that no matter what happens outside us externally, we can trust ourselves to deal with that. And that's a real letting go of control kind of energy, because there's so much trust in the self that it doesn't matter what's happening externally. And that's very much in the theme of this kind of spiritual relationship kind of energy. And I would say that based on this 10 of Cups also coming out, which is a heavy happiness and alignment card, anything that's not aligned with you during this Mercury retrograde is very likely to fade away. Anything that also doesn't have potential to be a real lifelong partnership and connection, like whether you're in connection or not, if there's no potential for this kind of King of Pentacles, Queen of Pentacles, like full expression in a connection, it's very likely that it will fade away. This Ace of Pentacles is pure potential when it comes to the manifestation of like wealth, lifestyle, and like family and like all that sort of stuff. So this coming out in reverse is definitely heavy, like anything misaligned falling away, anything without that potential falling away in this time. So that might be some of the bumpiness of this retrograde for you guys, that there's potentially going to be people either disappearing, spirit potentially removing people, or maybe like spirit creating some sort of like conflict or chaos to try and show you that someone needs to be cut off in some way. Yeah, so that's definitely possible. If you are in a connection and you're pretty sure that you can get to this energy with that person, then potentially what will be shown to you is not necessarily that they need to kind of leave, but more a part of them needs to leave in the way of being like either healed or being able to deal with that energy that's misaligned with this ultimate goal more productively. So being able to deal with kind of your own energy more productively in line with the goal might be a theme of this retrograde too. But yeah, this Nine of Cups is similar to the 10 of Cups energy. It's kind of a less manifested form though. It's kind of like peak energy when it comes to like having the best in life, especially to do with like lifestyle, family, and kind of security and stability. And so I would say that's definitely what's likely to come out of this retrograde. Also have this Nine of Wands in reverse. This is a moon in Sag energy, and it's all about establishing healthy boundaries and then staying within those boundaries. So I would say that's kind of similar to this 10 of Cups and Ace of Pentacles energy that we were talking about earlier. So if you are already in a connection, like creating really healthy boundaries to maintain the integrity of that connection, or if you're not in a connection, figuring out what boundaries you have so that you can have this partnership ultimately manifest. So knowing definitely what energy you will and won't accept. And yeah, like these lessons might be a little bit challenging during the Mercury retrograde with this Tower card coming out in reverse. And there's going to be some things from your unconscious that have maybe led to you accepting kind of less than, that are going to come up, and you're potentially going to have to like face in a very real experiential way. But yeah, kind of trust the process, go through all of the kind of thoughts and feelings, emotions, just be like really conscious of like what you're thinking and feeling. And just like keep your eye on the prize in terms of like knowing what you ultimately want to get out of this, so that you're not led astray or led down a really kind of dark alleyway that's definitely like could be a potential here, just because there's so much subconscious energy here. Yeah, so just like kind of keep one eye on the prize the whole time you're moving through this experience in the Mercury retrograde, to make sure that you ultimately come out where you want to come out. But we'll see if there's any little extra tidbits for you. So we have cassette, outdated thinking, conditioning, replaying events over in your head. So this is probably this subconscious energy. It'll be like outdated thinking and conditioning that will probably get replayed in this retrograde, but it'll be replayed for you to witness, for you to do something different with. We also have heart with a key, welcoming love, meeting the one, opening your heart, getting together perfect. I would say this energy is more to do with keeping your heart open during this time. I find Mercury retrogrades are definitely times where there's potential to kind of close off, especially because the retrograde will coincide with the Venus retrograde for a couple of weeks. So yeah, just remember to move through this with as much kind of open heart energy as possible. So I think this is more of a warning, this not today energy, about not dealing with hurt, avoiding conversations, and avoiding boundaries and holding on to anger. Like that's definitely not going to be helpful in this time. So making sure that you're not kind of avoiding any of that. The Mercury retrograde, because it has a lot to do with communication and like thinking, like it's likely that it'll be hard to resist, but you know, we're human, we can find 1,000,001 ways to resist things, so just be like super mindful of that. And then also we have this kisses energy, which is all about being unconditionally loving, giving and receiving, especially giving and receiving equally, being affectionate and falling in love. So this giving and receiving equally is definitely this King and Queen of Pentacles energy. Like this is preparing you to meet your match energy, or becoming more aligned with your match in your current connection energy. Do we have any last oracles? Yeah, so there's a lot that can potentially come to fruition in this retrograde if you're not avoiding things and if you're not resisting things. So definitely be going into this as open as possible. Any more oracles, please? Okay, so we've got a time to give rather than take. This is likely to be important during this retrograde for you. So yeah, a lot of this energy is obviously accepting what you know you deserve, but it's definitely not coming from like a walled off place. And it's definitely not coming from a place of like resisting offering things to people. So yeah, definitely don't focus on what you're getting, like focus on what you can give for sure. But yeah, just make sure that other people are able to give equally, if that makes sense. Okay, so your affirmation pile 1 is, I accept and release everything in my life that is beyond my power to change. So this is heavy hanged one energy that we're talking about before. Like you can trust yourself, therefore you don't need the world to be any more certain that it can be, because you can be kind of certain of yourself and trust in your ability to kind of deal with things. But I think I'm going to leave that there. I think that's enough messages to kind of take away and ponder on moving into this Mercury retrograde. Hope you got everything out of this reading that you really wanted and needed, or I hope you're entertained at the very least. It's been a pleasure reading for you. My name is Jade Rewilding, and I would love if you can like, comment and subscribe to keep me on your feed and to also boost me to other people's feeds so that they can hear these messages. But until I see you again, thanks so much for watching. Ciao. Hey there, pile 2. If you chose this beautiful moss agate, I think, crystal, if you have a Capricorn, Virgo or Taurus rising, then this reading is probably for you. But if your reading isn't resonating for your rising sign, you can always choose your sun sign. So if you're here as a Capricorn, Virgo or Taurus sun, welcome. I'm sure this reading will be better if you've come from another reading, or if you haven't, if you don't know your birth time, then I'm sure this reading will be for you. Just make sure that you take what resonates, leave what doesn't, and adjust any messages to kind of suit your particular situation. Remembering that I will leave a little description of exactly how this Mercury retrograde is, or exactly where this Mercury retrograde is likely to be affecting your life based on what house it's happening in for you. So for Capricorn risings, that's your 2nd house. For Virgo rising, that's your 6th. And for Taurus risings, that's your 10th. So all of your signs will kind of make this affect your bank, your career in a slightly different way. Just making sure that you double check that list if you're unsure, and just like using your intuition and discernment about what's really relevant for you now, based on kind of what's going on in your life. But we'll get going with our reading. Spirit, can we please have messages regarding these rising signs? What's happening for them during this Mercury retrograde, please? Oh, that's too many. We please have messages for these rising signs. Please clarify this Two of Wands energy and the world. And the Page of Wands. The Seven of Wands, please. Okay, so for the earth signs, it's definitely going to be a very introspective kind of retrograde for you. There's going to be a lot of energy kind of internalizing, a lot of things to think about, to contemplate on, definitely a lot to kind of reflect on and review. And that some things may get a little bit jumbled, but know that it's about making sure that you're kind of aligned with your potential. Like I'm sensing from these kind of cards that at the end of this retrograde, you'll potentially be realigned with kind of better ways of attracting and making money for you. And definitely you'll find that you'll kind of rejig things to flow better with you. This Two of Wands card is traditionally like all about discovery, but it's a very external energy because it's a heavy Aries energy. It's a Mars in Aries energy, so it's just normally very externalized, but coming out in reverse, this is giving me heavy internalized energy, so it's a more of a discovery within than a discovery without. And then this Six of Wands is a Jupiter and Leo energy, which is traditionally kind of a feel the fear and do it anyway energy. Again, very externalized, but coming out in reverse, this internalizes the energy. So potentially there'll be things to kind of reflect on in terms of what makes you uncomfortable, but it makes you uncomfortable in a way that you really want to pursue it. Like it's something that creates like a fear or a nervousness or anxiety from a place of like actual excitement, something that actually would light you up way more, something that maybe would make you more money, or maybe would make you money in a way that feels more aligned for you. Like maybe it's about letting go of cultural norms and societal pressures, especially with this Hierophant card coming out that has a lot to do with tradition and culture. Where do you need to like reflect on what conditioning you've been kind of given, and how do you create your own path, your own truth, and something that actually feels right for you? Especially with this World card, this is heavy Saturn energy. This is all about finding your covenant, finding your truth, and like honoring like whatever kind of commitment you made in this lifetime to serve other people, because Saturn rules the 10th house of the world, and that's all about how we serve others. Like how do we fit in the tapestry of life? How do we use our gifts to better humanity, or to better the world around us? This energy as well is also a very peak energy. It's the last card of the major arcana, and so it often represents kind of reaching a peak of lessons. Like potentially wherever you're at, you'll very soon kind of reach a peak, like a pinnacle, some sort of point of no return where you'll have learned so many lessons that you're kind of on a whole new level. So career-wise, bank-wise, abundance-wise, it's very likely that you're kind of on the precipice of a whole new level of having kind of learned the lessons that you needed to learn on this level, and it's representing like a readiness to continue, a readiness to learn more, move through the world in a different way, and like participate more authentically. So this Page of Wands is a very kind of exploration energy, but this is like a kind of younger energy, so it definitely seems like that whenever you reach this peak and whenever you've kind of realized what traditions you need to kind of buck against, there'll be like this process of discovery for you where you're probably going to have to learn a lot about kind of how to move forward in a like intelligent way, and definitely having to learn like who you can rely on for support. This King of Cups is definitely like a big kind of support, empathy, covenant, like who's your social circle, like who can you rely on. This is kind of like heavy, who are your band of brothers kind of energy, who's your kind of boys club, like who can be there to be your peer or your mentor or anything like that. Like this kind of energy is definitely about finding people to mentor you, finding your peers, finding people that will challenge you to new levels, who will push you and support you, and kind of always have your back. Some like this Seven of Pentacles ultimately is a huge success card in terms of finances, and just like wealth. It's traditionally a very success orientated card, traditionally a money orientated card. So like I'm expecting you to like progress in a way that makes you essentially make bank in the future. But it seems like it will be kind of a bit of a process for you to kind of shift from kind of where you're at to where you're going, it seems. This Seven of Wands in reverse, this is a Mars in Leo energy, and this is about really choosing your battles wisely, and really relying on divine protection wherever you're kind of scared or uncertain. And then this Ace of Swords energy is kind of pure potential when it comes to communication, cognition, and any of that kind of like air energy. It's traditionally about power and clarity. So definitely moving forward, there'll be some challenge when it comes to knowing which battles to engage in, and definitely there'll be kind of this murkiness and lack of clarity at times, like moving forward, especially kind of having graduated your previous lessons. Like this next phase will be probably a little bit dark in the beginning. Like it'll be, yeah, you'll be kind of trying to find your feet. It'll be difficult to navigate, and maybe not all of the divine protection will be like clear. Like I'm sensing that some of the lessons will be like hard lessons where you feel like you've kind of been led astray by spirit, and it's not until you kind of in retrospect realize that it wasn't actually being led astray, like being led right into an obstacle. The obstacle was essentially meant to like evolve you. This Judgment card is heavy like Judgment Day energy. It's a heavy transformation energy, and it's a very intense energy because it's ruled by Pluto. It tends to kind of break things apart very intensely and then like rebuild things very intensely. So like I would say that in this kind of like little period of challenge that is likely coming up for you, like this kind of being consumed and destroyed energy might come up for you. You might feel very kind of out of control and unstable with this King of Pentacles in reverse. This King of Pentacles loves security, loves stability. Like upright, it represents all of those things. It represents discipline, it represents kind of a little bit of stubbornness almost, and a little bit of kind of stagnation and like being stuck because everything's so secure and stable. And so like I would say with this energy coming out, like it's important that things are a little bit unstable for you. It'll be important that things kind of have the opportunity to go in a different direction for you to like surrender control a little bit and let things kind of let the chips fall where they may, so that you can kind of like not be controlling the outcome so much, so that you can end up kind of where your soul wants you to go. I'm getting it is very interesting. Like I would say from these energies, it seems like there's a lot of abundance impending, but like depending on what aspects your Mercury's making, if your Mercury's making lots of really positive aspects, I'd say that this might be a little bit smoother. If Mercury's making any negative aspects, especially negative aspects with Pluto in your natal chart, it might be a bit more of a challenging time. So yeah, I think in this retrograde, because often the retrograde is about reinvention, kind of things falling apart so that they can come back together, it might be a little bit uncomfortable, but I think it's really important that you trust the process. Obviously, if you feel like you need to have safety nets for whatever reason, like go ahead, like do all that stuff. But yeah, make sure you're still taking risks, like doing a lot of introspection about how you really want to contribute to the world. And yeah, really having faith in the process. But we'll see if there's any additional messages in the oracles. Yeah, so this for you guys is going to be a heavy self-reflection, a heavy change, and definitely coming into more abundance. These three cards like basically perfectly summarize this reading. Like I could not have picked three better cards to basically sum up what we've just talked about. So much abundance is coming for you, boo. You just got to trust the process, let the chips fall where they may, let things kind of be consumed and destroyed so that you can rebuild something better, something more aligned with your truth, something that kind of suits you more so than potentially what you've had in the past. But yeah, there'll be a lot to reflect on because there'll be a lot of change. There'll probably be a fair bit of uncertainty. There'll be a bit of lack of clarity at times. And so, yeah, just like really stay connected to you, be really involved in your own experience, so that you can kind of navigate this like bit of a weird time as best as possible and work with the energies really consciously. Okay. So we have work through your fears, adjustments are required, balance, spirituality, and practicality. So again, these are like similar messages to what we've had in our reading. This Mercury retrograde is definitely going to shift some things for you because there are some adjustments in your life that are required. Like you've kind of reached some sort of peak and you need to kind of experience a little bit of change so that you can find something that's more aligned with you. Yeah, there's kind of like some need to kind of shake things up for sure, but it'll definitely bring up some fears. There's a good book, I think it's called The Big Leap or The Great Leap or something by Gary someone, and it talks about how your fears can kind of contain you in a certain domain of your life because you're like too afraid to kind of take the next step, and like essentially you need to work through the fear before you can take the next step. So that book might be helpful, but the basic premise of the book is helpful enough. Just know that it's a good time to work through any fears that you might have, especially around career, abundance, anything like that, especially around change, because it's likely that if you were to resist this, it's likely that you would get dragged. So you either kind of go willingly as a willing participant and consciously work through your fears, or you get like super dragged through the mud throughout this whole process. Also, we have balance, spirituality, and practicality. So this is kind of like what I was alluding to before with like, if you feel like you need a safety net, like don't ignore that. Like you're not throwing yourself off the deep end with no life raft. Like you are so welcome to bring a life jacket, life raft, whatever you feel like you need. But yeah, there's also got to be this element of spirituality, like this element of like trusting yourself, letting the uncertainty be there, letting things fold out, like trusting the divine, and just being like really open to the lessons as well. So yeah, it's not like all or nothing. There's like space for both. Can we please have any more messages? Any last affirmations for these earth signs, please? Okay, so we have my inner being is connected to the divine wisdom of the universe. So yeah, I think this is that trust piece that we're talking about. Just really trust that you're connected to the divine wisdom and like you'll be able to navigate like things that feel challenging like much better than you might expect, as long as you're really connected to that spiritual element of yourself. But I think I'm gonna leave that here. I feel like that's enough to kind of get out of today's reading. I hope you were entertained at the very least, or got something that you feel like you wanted or needed out of this reading. My name's Wilding. It's been a pleasure reading for you. I would love if you could like, comment, and subscribe to keep me on your feed for more intuitive tarot card readings like this, and to also boost me to other people's pages so that I can find them for more messages. But thanks so much for watching, and until I see you again, ciao. Hey Pile 3, welcome to your reading about how this Mercury retrograde is going to be affecting you, given that it's happening in a house for you that has a lot to do with yourself, your identity, and personal development. So that's Aquarius risings, Gemini risings, Scorpio risings, and Pisces risings, or any of those sun signs. So if you're Aquarius, it's happening in your first house of self and identity. If you're Gemini rising, it's happening in your 9th house of personal development and spiritual development. If you're a Pisces rising, it's happening in your 12th house of the unconscious and patterning and escapism, as well as like collective unconscious. And if you're a Scorpio rising who's unmarried and has felt the call to come here instead of the love reading, it's happening in your 4th house of family and home. So if you're unmarried, it's more likely to affect you in a family and home way in terms of like your personal identity, whereas if you're married, it's more likely to affect your relationships. So that's kind of why I made the distinction for that house in particular. Because usually before we're married, these kind of retrogrades affect us as a self a lot more. So if you're any of those rising signs or sun signs, welcome. Remember, if your rising sign reading isn't resonating, you can go to your sun sign reading instead, because a lot of the time there's some kind of what's it called? Astrologers will sometimes take the sun house as the first house and act as if it's the rising sign. So your sun sign can therefore give you a reading based on this Mercury retrograde. So yeah, that's always there for you as an option. I do recommend checking out the rising sign reading first though, because it tends to be, like, for most people more accurate. But yeah, if you don't know your birth time or this one's not resonating for whatever reason, like, that's always there for you as an option. But yeah, making sure that you're taking what resonates, leaving what doesn't, because it is affecting different houses for you guys. So there will be like kind of slight differences in how this plays out for you based on where your retrograde transit's happening. So you can always double check my description box. I'll leave a little bit more info about how it's affecting you kind of more specifically. So if at any time something's not kind of resonating with what I'm saying, you can reflect back on where it's affecting you and kind of adjust the message slightly intuitively based on where you know you're likely to be more affected by this retrograde. Now that all the disclaimers are out of the way, we're going to get some messages for you guys regarding what's to come in this retrograde in terms of this personal development. Here are messages for these rising signs in regards to what's to come in this retrograde, please. Can you clarify this full energy, please? Into the Hanged one, please. And the Five of Cups. So in this Mercury retrograde, it's likely that some of your shadow side or shadow themes of your life are going to present themselves to you. And they're definitely going to be kind of patterns that you've probably been repeating on a loop for some time, but it might not be patterns that you're necessarily aware of, but you're going to head into kind of this like judgment day energy when it comes to some of your own patterns. And essentially you're going to kind of have to decide what to kind of let go of and where to make healthier choices, and what's kind of like a problem for another day. Basically, Spirit would like you to release as many kind of negative patterns of yours as possible in this retrograde, but obviously there's only so much that we can physically do as humans, so be kind to yourself as well. If you just work through kind of like one pattern, like that is more than enough. But yeah, it's likely to be a fairly intense retrograde for you guys personally, especially because it is affecting personal houses. And also we've got this Judgment Day energy coming out, which is heavy Pluto energy. Pluto basically destroys anything that's not aligned with love and our highest good. So, and it's also a very just intense energy on its own, even when it is a little bit more positively affecting us. So do expect a very intense retrograde, but it's likely that anything that's not aligned with kind of your best self and your most kind of loving self or unconditionally loving self, anything that's not aligned with that is likely to fall away. There's kind of like, I would say like challenging emotions that are likely to come up in this time. We've got a lot of kind of challenging Cups energies, and Cups is the most emotional suit, and then we have a little bit of Swords energy, which has a lot to do with stories that we tell ourselves, especially these two cards in particular. They can refer to our stories, especially stories from ego, and also places where we're not being super like loving or generous with ourselves. So yeah, this will be challenging, but you should come out the other side as a much better version of yourself and ultimately a happier version of yourself, if you can kind of consciously work with this retrograde energy that's going to kind of show you anything that's not working in your life, any areas where you need to maybe communicate your needs or even like get in touch with your needs and understand your own patterns of thinking and feeling, to yeah, like create a little bit of a better existence for yourself, but it just might take some work to get there. So this Six of Pentacles is, when it comes out in reverse, it does refer to usually not being generous enough with yourself or not being giving enough with yourself, in some way, like either neglecting yourself or being very critical and unkind to yourself. This can refer to very like negative self-talk when it comes out in reverse, especially clarified by the Seven of Swords. This Seven of Swords is traditionally all about kind of deception and betrayal. In this context, it's more about kind of betraying yourself and kind of like almost gaslighting yourself with that deception energy. Like definitely have a think about that in this retrograde, if there's any area where you feel like you're gaslighting yourself, and just like essentially not being kind to yourself in some way. This Hermit energy, this is the shadow work energy that I was talking about, and coming out in reverse definitely to me signifies more of a challenging shadow period, especially clarified by this Eight of Cups in reverse. This energy can sometimes be like a retreat, like a very conscious retreat. A lot of the time it does refer to kind of more of an unconscious abandonment. So there may be themes of where you're abandoning yourself that come up during this time. But yeah, again, a very challenging Cups energy. And then these energies clarified by this Hanged One energy. This is heavy Neptunian energy. And Neptunian energy in this card, like often traditionally refers to kind of uncertainty or illness. and this could apply to you, but more often than not, there's kind of like a more deep kind of spiritual connotation to this card in terms of like, especially in regards to uncertainty. Like uncertainty is a natural part of life. Like we can't have life be certain. And so the only certainty that we can really rely on is trusting ourselves to deal with whatever comes up in life, like trusting ourselves to deal with the chaos and uncertainty of life. And so, yeah, I would say this energy coming out right way up is that there's definitely going to be this kind of spiritual connotation to your lessons, and definitely in the end, like you're going to come out more spiritually aligned with yourself, but also more trusting of yourself, because you've kind of got yourself through this kind of weird time, as well as any kind of like self-abandonment or fear of abandonment with others. Like other kind of more emotional energies that you might encounter is to do with regret and loss, or like illusion, or kind of toxicity. Like that's heavy, these two energies. This 5 of Cups, this is Mars in Scorpio energy, so it's very similar to kind of the death card, like, or also the Tower card. It's kind of like the death card and Tower card like mesh together. So it definitely deals with a lot of regret, a lot of loss, a lot of the card encourages us to move through all stages of grief, really be in the emotional process, don't deny our feelings, kind of allow our feelings and feel the full spectrum of those things, go through all stages, and be willing to release and surrender it in the end, like once the feelings have been felt. And then this energy, this is a Venus in Scorpio energy. So I'd say it's like slightly softer. There's not as much intensity to this energy, but it is a lot of the time about a need to gain clarity in some respect, like to see things more clearly. And it's also often referring to where we're operating under some sort of like delusions. For you, it might have to do with this kind of unkindness and maybe self-gaslighting energy, where you're not kind of seeing yourself clearly and not being kind enough to yourself, and maybe not seeing situations where you're especially kind of mean to yourself clearly. It definitely asks us to kind of detox, as well as kind of like in this context, based on all the other cards that came out, pay attention to our thoughts, pay attention to where you're potentially not being kind enough to yourself, and if you can't change the thought, at least notice that you're having it, because that awareness is kind of step one. So we've also got this 9 of Swords energy, which is traditionally like kind of high anxiety, sometimes depression kind of energy. It's a Mars in Gemini energy, so you got a lot of Mars energy here, which is all like heavy conflict, heavy kind of force, heavy kind of masculine energy that's coming out. So lots of those themes will have to be kind of reckoned with in this retrograde. But this one in particular usually refers to facing the fear, facing the source of fear and anxiety. So for you, if you've gotten into a little bit of kind of self-criticism, facing the fear and anxiety might have to do with why this self-criticism feels like a good idea. Like, what's it kind of the better of two evils of? Like, is there some sort of uncomfortability with like self-kindness for you, like that you need to kind of feel into and kind of like open up and reflect on? Especially if you're a Pisces rising, like all these energies in general will be more intense because this is happening in the 12th house of the unconscious. So yeah, like digging deep of like kind of where these patterns have come from, and finding almost what you feel has kept you in this loop in the past. Like what's kind of perpetuated it for you? Is it like kind of feelings of not enoughness? Is it, you know, feelings of like being undeserving in some way? Like, what is it? This world card is a heavy Saturnian truth card. It has a lot to do with karma. So yeah, is there some sort of karma from your past that has led to these patterns, especially childhood stuff, like, and kind of especially Scorpio risings that ended up here? It's very likely that based on this happening in your 4th house of like family, home, origin, roots, conditioning, that this will be super relevant for you, but it should be relevant kind of for everyone. What kind of like conditioning and karma have created this energy for you? And this might be deep. This might be deep in your subconscious. Like, this might, during this retrograde, you might not deal with these themes super overtly. You might not even be aware that it's going on, but there's going to be things that happen in this retrograde that kind of trigger this sort of stuff to play out, to try and get your awareness, to try and get your attention onto these patterns, so that you can see them, witness them, accept them, heal them, love them, and love yourself more, love yourself better. And yeah, basically like get rid of the things that stop you from loving yourself, because you loving yourself is a natural state. It's more that there's blocks that are preventing that natural flow of love for some reason, probably to do with karma, to do with your history. So yeah, now's a good time, because all retrograde energies are very reflective. Now's a really good time to kind of let Mercury retrograde make some things hit the fan, but then be prepared to be very reflective, because it's likely that you'll learn from it. Yeah, you'll likely learn in some way. But let's see if there's any additional messages in the oracles for you. So we have the path and we also have will. I think because this path might be particularly kind of weird in this time, based on this feeling a bit like it's in your unconscious, like there'll probably be a lot that you'll have to kind of like really consciously kind of search for, and like using your own kind of motivation and assertiveness, like go looking for and like uncover. Like, it might not necessarily be things that are really easy to understand, but yeah, I think you need to trust where spirit might be kind of like scratching against something that feels a little bit painful, because it's probably for a reason. It's to illuminate things to you. So yeah, really trusting the path, like trusting the process with this. And especially when it gets dark, if it does get dark, having like a really strong sense of will to get you through, and definitely avoiding being consumed by these kind of like anxious or depressive thoughts. Okay, so we have, you are good enough, surrender to the divine, adjustments are required, and have faith in your dreams. So it's likely that this process is going to line you with things that you want. It's likely when this sort of healing comes up, it's likely that you're trying to manifest something. And so when the spirit hears that you want something, spirit naturally will give you the lessons that you need to learn to undo any of the blocks that are keeping you from that in this moment. So if there's something in particular that you're manifesting, it's likely that these kind of feelings, this undercurrent, is kind of blocking your manifestations. And so it's likely that in leaning into this and doing this work, that your dreams will actually be able to come true, and kind of have faith in this process as a process to actually give you your dreams too. Know that these adjustments are required for your manifestations to come true, for what it is that you dream for yourself to be able to come into fruition. Essentially, all you're doing is removing blocks that are stopping that from already being here. Know that you're good enough, especially like if you're confronted with a lot of challenging thoughts and feelings in this time, and really surrender to the divine, surrender to the path, surrender to kind of like this higher meaning of like what's to come. Do we have any final affirmations? Okay, so we have I forgive the hurt that has been done to me. I step away from the prison of resentment. So this will have a lot to do with this karma energy for sure. We also have my inner being is connected to the divine wisdom of the universe, and I attract good luck and I am open to receiving miracles. So this energy is heavy to do with having faith in your dreams and allowing things to come into fruition. And then this divine wisdom will definitely have a lot to do with your ability to kind of uncover any of these blocks that we've been talking about. Like, you know them on a soul level, so trust in that, and anything that kind of comes up, if it feels like a soul niggle, like really trust it. But I think I'm going to leave that there. I think that's enough to kind of take away for today. I hope you got everything out of this reading that you really wanted and needed, or I hope you were entertained at the very least. It's been a pleasure reading for you. My name is Jade Rewilding, and I would love if you could like, comment, and subscribe so that I can see you again on your feed for another intuitive tarot card reading, and so that other people can also find these messages. But until I see you again, ciao.